Atmosphere on set?
Yes.
In 3 words, I would say...
Would you say writing this novel took you longer than writing your average fiction piece?
Not really, because, this was inspired by true characters, but it was completely fiction. Like they were nothing like my parents. Their situation was nothing like my parents. So it wasn't like I took their story and, rewrote it. It literally, the casserole scene where he the first time is what happened between my mother and father when he for the first time. So that was basically the only scene that I didn't completely invent. And so I don't think it was harder in that sense or took any longer.
Colleen Hoover has officially broken her silence on the Blake Lively and Ryan Reynolds lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. And let's be real, this entire crash out reeks of Ryan's fingerprints, not Blake's. Now she's sitting down for an interview with Elle, and if you're not caught up, she currently has a movie in theaters regrading you. Despite critics dragging it with a brutal 28%, the film has quietly pulled in $82 million at the box office. It hasn't had explosive weekly numbers, but it's climbed steadily, with $44 million earned domestically. And remember, It Ends With Us hit $50 million in its very first weekend. So yes, it's below It Ends With Us, and the reviews are worse. But Colleen has now stepped into the world of filmmaking. The same woman who once said she was too busy writing books to be involved in film is suddenly very much a filmmaker. And when she was asked how involved she actually was on set, how much of her vision she protected, she admitted, "I wasn't super involved. I don't want to take any credit." She says she was on set for 1 to 2 weeks, mostly as a spectator, watching everyone bring their own talent and passion to the movie. She even said she might have stepped in if she felt things were going off track, but she never felt the need. Promotion week rolled around and she doubled down. Not heavily involved, but yes, she was present. Still not a filmmaker. And honestly, it's unusual. Most authors stay authors and let the actual filmmakers handle the films. But Colleen seems to love the spotlight, and she also has a habit of bending the truth. Is that just a softer way of saying she lies? One big lie around It Ends With Us is this idea that Lily and Ryle's story is truly her mother's story. It's not. If you dig back into Colleen's early interviews, she clearly said it's not really about her mom, just lightly inspired. Almost everything is fiction. The only real moment taken from her mother's life was the casserole scene. Her dad wasn't a neurosurgeon, her mom didn't run a flower shop, they didn't live in Boston, they didn't have a luxury penthouse. None of that happened. The entire narrative, the baby, the custody, Atlas, the breakup, all fiction. She created a story. She's not a memoirist. Being inspired by something doesn't make it an autobiography, and it always felt odd that she let people believe it was truly her mother's trauma. And especially strange when Colleen herself says she's been in the same stable relationship since she was 16, insists her marriage is healthy, and has never personally experienced DV.
Involved were you on set and making sure that your vision was still intact?
I wasn't super involved. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to take any credit. I was on set for about 1 to 2 weeks, more as like a spectator. I was just there enjoying everything. And I felt like everyone that had a hand in this movie brought their own talent to it and their own passion. And I didn't want to get in the way of that. I probably maybe would have if I thought it was going in the wrong direction, but I never felt that way.
During the promotion of her film, Colleen Hoover admitted she wasn't heavily involved in production, though she did spend 1 to 2 weeks on set. She acknowledged having some level of input, but emphasized that she wasn't a filmmaker. It's rare for an author to transition into film. Most writers remain behind a page, letting directors and producers bring their stories to life. Colleen, however, seems drawn to the spotlight, and she has a tendency to misrepresent the truth. One notable example is It Ends With Us. Colleen has repeatedly claimed the story of Lily and Ryle is based on her mother, but it isn't. From the early days of promoting the book, she admitted it was only inspired by her mom, not her actual story. Almost everything in the book is fiction. The only scene rooted in real life is the casserole scene. Beyond that, none of it happened. Her dad wasn't a neurosurgeon, her mom didn't own a flower shop, they didn't live in Boston, and they certainly didn't have a luxurious penthouse. Custody battles, pregnancies, breakups, the Atlas, everything was fabricated. Colleen created a fictional narrative, not a non-fiction memoir. Inspiration doesn't equal biography, and claiming otherwise to profit off a parent's experiences feels ethically questionable. She has also admitted she's been in the same relationship since she was 16, insisting it is healthy and free of any domestic violence. Yet she positions herself as an authority on these topics despite having no personal experience, a point that has drawn criticism from many who follow her work.
Like I've been married to the same guy that I met and started dating when I was 16. We have 3 wonderful kids. I have a very boring life. Like there's not much else I could write about on a personal level that would make for a great book. So, I think I'm just going to stick to the stuff that I enjoy writing. That one was very difficult to write.
It seems odd for someone who has never experienced any level of domestic violence to position herself as a spokesperson for it. Perhaps that explains why It Ends With Us is widely criticized for its unrealistic portrayal of abuse. To be clear, the book isn't really about her mother. Colleen has admitted that it's overwhelmingly fictional, 99.9% made up, yet she marketed it as her mother's story. This is classic PR spin. You create a narrative, a myth, and the myth becomes the selling point. For this book, the myth was that it was her mom's story. Now, she's reportedly weaponizing her mother again, claiming that she and her mom have suffered PTSD as a result of lawsuits related to the film adaptation. But this is misleading. Neither she nor her mother is actually being sued, yet she frames it as more abusive than what her mother endured when her father abused her, a claim that is both false and gaslighting. Colleen also discussed her film Regretting You, which has been a moderate success with $82 million at the box office, far below the $50 million opening of It Ends With Us, and just above the break-even point. Critics were largely negative, and financially, the film is not a blockbuster. Despite this, Colleen seems embarrassed by her own writing, a strange stance considering the media narrative she has built around herself. When faced with criticism for her oversimplified depiction of domestic violence, she frames it as standing by her mother's experience, even though the story is largely fictional. She claims, "I respect that people have passionate opinions about it, but I would not change a thing because that was my mother's experience." In reality, it wasn't. Only one scene, the casserole scene, has any connection to her mother. By invoking her mother, she shields herself from criticism. This pattern of deflection, combined with her insistence that the book was healing, suggests a degree of narcissism. She can learn from criticism, yet still maintain a story that elevates her own perspective while using her mother as cover. She has also admitted she wouldn't write the book today, citing fear of scrutiny, which underscores how self-serving her narrative choices have been. The only scene that was actually based on her mother was the casserole scene. One scene. Her mom stayed with her father until Colleen was born, and she had siblings who grew up alongside her. So, by any measure, this is not her mother's story. How does one deflect criticism? By using someone else as a shield. And here's where the contradictions begin. Colleen is listed as the executive producer on the film and has a writing credit. She has claimed she was on set only for a few days and otherwise completely unaware of what was happening between Blake, Ryan, and Justin. That's odd, especially considering she previously told Extra she had spent 1 to 2 weeks on set. In reality, it was closer to 2 weeks, and she documented much of it in her Facebook group, The Cohorts. Yet she spins this to suggest minimal involvement. The truth doesn't change, but lies do, and they shape perception. She even publicly praised Blake for being strong and brave, with friends adding that if you knew, what we saw, you'd be shocked. Now she claims she was completely unaware, an attempt to distance herself from a situation she clearly contributed to. She calls the whole mess an unfortunate and disappointing and likens it to a circus, even as real people's careers have been impacted. She claims she wants to stay removed from the negativity, saying, "I have my own story I could tell, but I won't. I don't want to bring attention to it. I don't want to have to put someone else down to lift myself up." Colleen repeatedly falls back on the line, "You don't know the truth. I don't even know the truth." Yet in her private groups, she spent months asserting she did know the truth. Now she claims ignorance, while simultaneously hinting at having her own version of events. So which is it? Was she truly unaware? Or does she simply choose when and how to share her narrative? For years, Colleen insisted she would never enter filmmaking, only writing books. Now she's a filmmaker with her own production company, clearly motivated by the financial opportunities in film versus print. While her success in books is notable, print media is in decline, and most authors sell far fewer copies than they once did. Her last book in 2023 sold under 100,000 copies, a strong performance for the average author, but minuscule compared to the runaway success of It Ends With Us. Most authors don't even sell 5,000 books in total. Colleen recognized that film offered both control and greater earning potential, and she has leveraged it, even as she tries to position herself above controversy. To put things in perspective, you need to sell about 5,000 books in a week just to make the New York Times bestseller list. Colleen's last book, released in 2023, sold under 100,000 copies, around 75,000 to be more specific. Compare that to It Ends With Us, which sold roughly 12 million copies. Of the 24 books she's written, the vast majority of her sales came from that one novel. The rest of her titles have barely made a dent in comparison. Colleen claims she mostly feels badly for her mother, stating that the book was inspired by her story. Now she goes further, suggesting that the aftermath of this film gives both her and her mother PTSD. She even implies that the stress of the lawsuits caused them more pain than her mother endured from being physically, emotionally, and psychologically abused while living in poverty. That's a disturbing statement. Her mother wasn't being sued, didn't make money from the film, and isn't even central to this controversy. The narrative she created framed her mother as the core of the story, which simply isn't true. Initially, she claimed the book was her mother's story. Now she says it was merely inspired by her. If her mother is feeling hurt, sympathy is understandable, but the blame lies squarely with Colleen and Blake. Colleen lied about the book being her mother's story, colluded with Blake to take over a film originally connected to Justin, and now uses her mother's past abuse as a shield to claim this lawsuit is somehow worse than real domestic violence. This behavior reveals a lack of understanding about domestic abuse. Criticism, legal disputes, or public opinion are not equivalent to the sustained physical, psychological, and narcissistic abuse victims experience in real-life situations. Colleen has also expressed shame about her most personal novel, saying, "I can't even recommend it to anyone. I feel like the lawsuit has overshadowed it. I'm almost embarrassed to say I wrote it. When people ask what I do, I just say I'm a writer. Please don't ask what I wrote." She hopes that once the trial concludes, she might feel differently. She acknowledges she's still proud of the book, but less publicly so, and muses that maybe she needs therapy. This brings up a critical point. How can she claim PTSD without ever having gone to therapy or received a proper diagnosis? PTSD is a clinical diagnosis. As someone who has experienced it firsthand, I know it involves triggers, dissociation, sleep disruption, rage, and intense fear or sadness. None of that aligns with her public behavior. She's been making movies, living seemingly carefree, and enjoying the high life, all while claiming trauma. It's troubling to see someone weaponize trauma for personal narrative or gain, but given her history, it's unfortunately consistent. Is it any surprise that Colleen Hoover would weaponize trauma this way, given what we know about her? She has repeatedly misrepresented the truth. She lied to Justin in text messages, claiming she didn't unfollow him because of him, but because of Blake, or rather her own unresolved issues. She lied about her involvement in the film, claiming she wasn't on set or part of the script, when in fact she was. She misrepresented her influence, claiming she didn't give input on the script when she clearly did.
She supported Blake publicly while privately contradicting herself, saying, "You've been through so much," and later claiming, "I don't know what happened. I was completely unaware." Yet she admits to Justin that she had her own issues with him. Then she adds, "I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I have my own stories I could tell." Now, Colleen Hoover is a filmmaker with her own production company. She claims she doesn't have time to write, which explains why her next book, the first she's written in 3 years, is only coming out in January. But consider this. Many authors have had dozens of their books adapted into films, yet they have not become filmmakers or started production companies. Stephen King, for example, has had 34 films made from his books, yet he only directed Maximum Overdrive in 1986 and wasn't involved in the rest. Nicholas Sparks has had 11 adaptations, John Grisham 9, J.K. Rowling 9, and none of them started production companies or became filmmakers. What Colleen is doing isn't typical for an author. Authors are writers, not filmmakers. But right now, print media is dying, and with it, the financial rewards for writing books have declined. Anyone can self-publish today, but to make serious money, you have to sell massive numbers of books. Colleen self-publishes because she wants control, just as she directs and produces films to maintain control. But in doing so,